Imagine you're a detective. You've spent months trying to put away a dangerous gang lieutenant, a criminal responsible for violence, drugs, and the destruction of your community. And then one night, you find him dying in an alley, beaten and stabbed by his own crew, left to bleed out like garbage. Do you save him? Or do you let justice take its course? For Detective Anya Sharma, this wasn't a hypothetical question. It was a split-second decision that would either end her career or expose the corruption rotting her entire police department from the inside. This is the true story of a cop who broke every rule in the book to save her enemy. A gangster who became the most important witness she'd ever have. And a choice that proved sometimes the line between right and wrong isn't just blurred, it's completely shattered. What you're about to hear involves corrupt cops, gang betrayal, a desperate alliance formed in a hidden cabin, and a standoff that could have ended in bloodshed but instead ended with the truth. This isn't a Hollywood story. This is what happens when the system fails so badly that doing the right thing means breaking the law. Before we dive in, I need to be honest with you. This video took over 30 hours to research, write, script, and edit. Every detail had to be verified, every timeline checked, every emotional beat carefully crafted to honor what really happened. If you value this kind of deep dive storytelling, the kind that doesn't cut corners or sensationalize, hitting that subscribe button means we can keep creating content like this. It's free for you, but it means everything to us. Now, let's talk about the night Detective Anya Sharma made a choice that changed everything. The impossible night. Detective Anya Sharma wasn't supposed to be in the industrial district that night. Hell, she wasn't supposed to be anywhere. She should have been home, reviewing case files for her internal affairs investigation, or sleeping off the stress of a job that was slowly destroying her. But her captain had just told her to drop it. The investigation into police corruption, the one she'd been pouring her life into for 6 months, was being shut down. Not enough evidence, Captain Morrison had said, though Anya knew that was bullshit. There was plenty of evidence. What there wasn't was the will to follow it. So she walked through the empty streets of a city she'd sworn to protect, past shuttered businesses and graffiti-tagged walls, into the industrial district where legitimate business ended and the gray economy began. That's when she heard it. A sound she'd heard too many times in her career. Someone dying. The gasps were shallow, wet, desperate. Anya's hand went to her service weapon as she moved toward the sound, her training kicking in automatically. She rounded the corner into an alley lit by a single flickering streetlight. And there he was. Leo "Ghost" Morales. 23 years old. Lieutenant in the Vallejo gang. Suspected in multiple homicides, drug trafficking, and the kind of violence that kept neighborhoods terrorized. Anya had been trying to build a case against him for 8 months. He was dying. Multiple stab wounds, visible even in the dim light. His designer jacket, probably worth more than Anya's monthly rent, was soaked black with blood. His face was swollen, beaten so badly one eye was completely shut. And he was slumped against a dumpster like someone had literally thrown him away. Anya's hand went to her radio. Procedure was clear. Call it in, secure the scene, wait for backup and an ambulance. But her finger froze on the button and that moment, Anya's mind raced through a dozen calculations. Leo "Ghost" Morales was a criminal. He'd hurt people, destroyed lives, flooded her city with drugs that killed kids. By any measure of justice, maybe this was what he deserved. But he was also just a kid. 23. Younger than Anya's brother had been when he died. And there was something else. Something that made Anya's instincts scream at her not to call this in. The same corrupt cops she was investigating, the ones Captain Morrison had just told her to stop looking at, those cops had connections to the Vallejo gang. She knew it. She just couldn't prove it yet. If she called this in, Leo would die. Not from his wounds, but from a convenient complication on the way to the hospital. A slow response time. Wrong turn. Or maybe just a pillow over his face in the ambulance. Leo's eyes found hers. Even through the pain, through the shock, there was something in that look. Not the cold calculation of a gangster. Not defiance. Just pure, desperate terror. He was looking at her the way her brother must have looked at the paramedics who tried to save him after the drive-by. The brother who died because no one would testify, because the gang had everyone too scared to speak up, because the system failed. Fuck, Anya whispered. She made a choice that could end everything she'd worked for. Anya looked around the alley. No cameras. No witnesses. Just her, a dying gangster, and a choice that violated every procedure in the book. She pulled off her jacket and pressed it against the worst wound, a deep stab in his abdomen. Leo gasped in pain. I know it hurts. Stay with me. Getting him to her car was brutal. Leo was dead weight, barely conscious, leaving a trail of blood. Anya's car was parked 2 blocks away. Every step felt like a mile. Every sound made her think someone was watching. Every shadow could be a witness to her career ending in real time. She got him into the back seat, buckled him in, absurdly following traffic safety while committing what was probably a dozen felonies, and drove. Not to a hospital. Not to the precinct. To her grandfather's cabin, an hour outside the city, a place no one knew about. A place where she could think, where she could figure out what the hell she was doing. The cabin was rustic, isolated, and hadn't been used since her grandfather died 3 years ago. Anya half carried, half dragged Leo inside and laid him on the kitchen table. Her field medic training from the academy came back. Check the wounds. Stop the bleeding. Prevent shock. She worked methodically, her hands steady even as her mind screamed that this was insane. 3 stab wounds. The worst was in his abdomen. Possibly hit the intestine. Another in his side, between the ribs. The third in his shoulder. Plus evidence of a severe beating. Broken ribs, possible concussion, contusions everywhere. She cleaned the wounds with supplies from the first aid kit, did her best to close them with the medical staples she'd kept from her grandfather's nursing days, and started in 4 with fluids she wasn't technically licensed to administer. Leo drifted in and out of consciousness. When he was awake, he watched her with confused, suspicious eyes. When he was out, he mumbled in Spanish. Prayers, names, apologies. It took 3 hours to stabilize him. When Anya finally stepped back, exhausted and covered in his blood, she looked at what she'd done. She'd saved a gangster's life. Hidden evidence. Failed to report a crime. Provided medical care without a license. And probably destroyed any chance of prosecuting him if he survived. What have I done? She whispered. But she knew. She'd done what no one had done for her brother. She'd given someone a chance. Put yourself in Anya's position. You find your enemy dying. The system is corrupt. Would you save him? Or would you call it in and let the chips fall where they may? I genuinely want to know what you'd do. When Leo fully regained consciousness, it was dawn. The cabin was quiet except for birdsong and the crackling of the fire Anya had built. She was sitting in a chair across the room, her service weapon on the table beside her, not aimed at him, but a clear reminder. Leo tried to sit up and immediately gasped in pain, collapsing back. What? Don't move, Anya said. You've got 3 stab wounds and probably broken ribs. Moving is a bad idea. Leo turned his head, taking in his surroundings. When his eyes landed on Anya, recognition and confusion warred on his face. You're the detective. Sharma. That's right. Why am I not in a hospital? Or a cell? Because you'd be dead if I'd taken you to either. Leo processed that. So you saved me? Why? That's what I'm wondering myself. Anya leaned forward. Let's start with who did this to you. Leo laughed, then winced. Why should I tell you anything? Because whoever did this left you to die in an alley like trash. Because I could have let you bleed out but didn't. Because right now, I'm the only person in this city who gives a damn whether you live or die. Leo was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. My own crew. My hermanos. The Vallejo gang? They did this. Yeah. They thought I was snitching. Thought I was talking to internal affairs. He looked at her with something like bitter amusement. To you. Were you? No. But I was thinking about it. That got Anya's attention. Why? Sharma, Reeves called out, walking toward her with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. We've been worried about you. You dropped off the grid. Taking some personal time, Anya said carefully. Didn't realize I needed to check in. When you're working an active investigation. Yeah, you do. His eyes flicked to her car, where Leo was barely visible. Who's your friend? None of your business. Reeves's smile disappeared. See, that's where you're wrong. Leo Morales is very much my business. He's a fugitive from a crime scene. We've been looking for him. And here you are, hiding him like some kind of, what? Sympathetic cop. Or maybe something more corrupt. Anya felt the accusation land like a punch. Reeves was already framing the narrative. She wasn't saving Leo, she was colluding with him. He's under my protection, Anya said clearly. And he's ready to talk to the DA about a lot of things, including which cops are on the Vallejo payroll. Reeves's expression darkened. The two enforcers moved to flank him. You're making a mistake, Sharma. A career-ending mistake. My career's already over the moment I picked him up. But taking down corrupt cops and gang leaders? That's worth it. You think anyone will believe a gangster's testimony over sworn officers? I think the DA will believe evidence, dates, payments, recordings. Anya smiled coldly. Leo's been keeping receipts. What Reeves didn't know was that Anya had sent a text before leaving the cabin, not from her personal phone, but from a burner she'd kept for emergencies. The text went to ADA Marcus Chen and contained 2 words, code red. It was a signal they'd established months ago when Anya's investigation started getting dangerous. It meant, corrupt cops involved, need clean backup, trust no one from the precinct. Now, as Reeves and his enforcers closed in, Anya saw vehicles pulling into the parking lot. Not marked police cars, those would have tipped off Reeves. But unmarked sedans driven by detectives from the state police and the FBI's public corruption unit. Chen had come through. Reeves saw them too. His hand moved toward his weapon. Don't, Anya said sharply. It's over. You're outnumbered, outgunned, and there are at least a dozen witnesses recording this on their phones right now. She wasn't wrong. The confrontation had attracted attention. People in the parking lot had their phones out, filming. In the age of viral videos, any shooting would be scrutinized frame by frame. Reeves's hand stopped. The enforcers looked at each other, uncertain. Detective Marcus Reeves, one of the state police detectives said, approaching with his badge visible. We need you to come with us for questioning regarding allegations of corruption and conspiracy. This is bullshit, Reeves snarled. I'm a decorated officer. Who's about to be indicted, ADHN said, stepping out of one of the sedans. He looked at Anya. Detective Sharma. Are you and your witness safe? We're good, Anya said. Then let's get him somewhere secure. We have a lot to talk about. The next 3 weeks were a blur of depositions, evidence review, and legal maneuvering. Leo, now officially in protective custody, provided testimony that was devastating in its detail. He named names, not just cops, but gang leaders, corrupt officials, money launderers. He provided documentation that corroborated everything. Anya's internal affairs investigation, which had been shut down, was suddenly reopened with state oversight. Captain Morrison, it turned out, had been receiving payments through a shell company. He was arrested along with Reeves and 4 other officers. The Vallejo gang's leadership was systematically dismantled. Arrests happened in coordinated raids. Assets were seized. The network that had terrorized the city for years was broken. But it came at a cost. Anya was put on administrative leave while the department investigated her decision to hide Leo. The fact that she'd violated procedure, failed to report a crime, and provided medical care without proper licensing couldn't be ignored, even if her actions had led to the biggest corruption bust in the city's history. The media was vicious. Half the headlines called her a hero. The other half called her a rogue cop who'd broken the law and undermined the justice system. Talk shows debated whether the ends justified the means. Op-eds were written about police accountability. Anya ignored most of it. She had bigger things to worry about. The department's disciplinary board gave her 2 options: resign quietly with her pension intact, or face a public hearing that would likely result in termination. Take the resignation, her union lawyer advised. You'll land somewhere else. Maybe federal work. But if you fight this, they'll drag you through the mud. Anya thought about it. About the career she'd built. About the cases she'd solved. About the good she'd done. Then she thought about the night in the alley. About the choice she'd made. About Leo's testimony bringing down a corrupt system. I'll take the hearing, she said. The hearing was held 3 months after she'd found Leo in that alley. The room was packed. Media, activists, police supporters, community members. Anya sat at the front, facing a panel of 3 department brass and 2 civilian oversight members. They went through every decision she'd made that night, every violation of procedure, every broken rule. And then they asked the question, "Detective Sharma, do you regret your actions?" Anya looked at the panel. "No, I don't." The room erupted. The panel called for order. "I won't stand here and say I followed procedure," Anya continued. "I didn't. I broke rules. I made choices that violated department policy. But those rules exist within a system that was fundamentally broken. A system where corrupt cops were actively trying to kill a potential witness. Where calling for backup meant calling the very people who wanted him dead." She stood. "I became a cop to protect people. To serve justice. And that night, justice wasn't following protocol. It was saving a life so that life could help us take down a corrupt network that had been destroying our city for years. If that's wrong according to the rules, then the rules need to change." The verdict. The panel deliberated for 2 days. When they returned, the room was silent. "Detective Sharma," the lead panelist said, "your actions violated numerous department policies. Under normal circumstances, termination would be recommended." Anya felt her stomach sink. However, these were not normal circumstances. "Your actions, while procedurally incorrect, resulted in the successful prosecution of corrupt officers and a major organized crime network. You demonstrated courage and judgment in impossible conditions." The panelist looked at her directly. "You are hereby suspended without pay for 6 months. Following that suspension, you will be reinstated with a notation in your file. You will also be required to complete additional ethics training." It took Anya a moment to process. Not fired. Not forced to resign. Suspended, but keeping her badge. "Thank you," she said quietly.